Today we're talking about retirement expenses and planning ahead for your future. One of the questions I get asked on a regular basis is, can I afford to retire? And I always say that's a great question. My first question though is, how much do you spend? My second question is, do you want to maintain your standard of living? So at that point, nobody has ever told me they want to have less of a standard of living. So at that point, what I like to do is start to take them through a lifestyle analysis using just a monthly client expenses worksheet that we've got here in the office. So what I have found, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. So what I have found is that typically people have a pretty good handle on what they spend when it comes to their essential expenses specific to housing. So the cost of their home mortgage or rent, property taxes, and utilities. That's fairly easy to determine by looking back at records, making an average over the course of the year because there are fluctuations due to seasonality with gas and electric. When it comes to groceries, that gets to be a little bit more of a wild card. Usually the person who does the shopping has a good grasp on how much groceries cost, and the other person, if it's a couple, is a little surprised. So it's a good thing to do this exercise together to get clear on what the actual cost of groceries are. So when it comes to transportation, that's a big piece of our expense, especially with where we live. Typically in West Michigan, we don't have public transportation, so a car kind of is really a necessity. So when we look at vehicle payments, if it's a household with two cars, that can be quite expensive. Most people haven't taken the time to put pen to paper to figure out how much they actually spend on gas. And then the other one that always ends up being a surprise is maintenance. So we can estimate how often we're going to get an oil change. But it starts to get a little more sketchy when it comes to how much are we going to need for tires, and when did we last replace our tires, how much are they going to cost when we do replace them in the future, and what if there's some other maintenance that needs to be done, either preventative or something that is actually necessary due to just wear and tear on the car. So that's an area where if you're not diligent, it can end up becoming a problem. When we looked further down, if you are self-employed in any capacity, there's quarterly estimates. So the self-employment quarterly estimates, you may have quarterly estimates in retirement if that's part of your long-term plan and your goals. Credit card payments, so on this form, I just asked for the minimum credit card payments because I'd like to be able to work with you and create a plan so that we can get you completely paid off with all of your credit cards before you retire. Same thing with student loans. I really want to make sure your student loans are paid off before you retire. Over on this side of the worksheet, one of the things that keeps people from retiring when they actually want to and feeling like they're trapped and they have to work until they're 65 and can qualify for Medicare is health insurance. So depending if you have health insurance provided by your employer now and your retirement date, that can be a variable that we need to look at and put some numbers to. Life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care insurance, those are all costs that you may or may not have in the future, so we need to look ahead at those and see if it's actually necessary for you to carry those types of insurance or if you're at a place where you're self-insured. Your home insurance, perhaps an umbrella policy, the cost of that is important to calculate, as well as car insurance. Looking forward, also, if you're at the point where you're still working and you're trying to figure out if you can retire or how much you're going to need to retire, we'd want to make sure that we get your 401k loan paid off before that date. So these are expenses that I consider to be essential expenses. And the lower half of this chart are discretionary expenses. These are the expenses that I kind of refer to as your fun money. I also refer to it as your every day is a Saturday type money. So every day is a Saturday in retirement. What do you do on Saturdays when you're working? That's the day you go to Home Depot, you go to the grocery store, maybe you hit them all, you're spending money, you're doing things. and those things tend to cost money. So if we do not have a good grip on what your discretionary expenses are before you retire, this is your lifestyle money. You don't want to go backwards in lifestyle, do you? And so it's a good idea to identify how much you're saving for the future, for emergencies, what your giving priorities are, and then how much you're going to spend on things like, ladies, you know, hair is not inexpensive. If you enjoy getting a massage, if you want to have your nails done, those are things, guys, that do cost a considerably amount of more money than what you pay for it. Spending money, you want to have freedom to spend and have some discretion to spend without getting into financial trouble. It's a great idea to stay fit and healthy. You don't have to pay for exercise, but if your gym membership is important to you, then we want to have it built into your budget. If you enjoy going out for dinner, great. If you want to grab a coffee, awesome. Let's make sure that today, going out to eat and grabbing a coffee isn't sabotaging your future and causing you down the road to have less of a lifestyle than you'd like to have. If traveling and vacations are important to you, it's important to identify how much you actually spend on those so that you can continue to travel and enjoy the vacations that you've become accustomed to enjoying. Pets, if you've got a four-legged friend, maybe it's a feathered friend, it's important to look at the cost of having a pet if that's something that you plan to do in the future. How about how you give? I have gifts on here, and I have an exercise that I can take you through if you're interested in making a plan around having money at the time that you need it so that you can give the gifts the way that you want to give them. Housekeeping, snowkeeping, snow and yard work, decorating and maintenance, those are other expenses that are important, as well as keeping ourselves clothed. So I have a lot of people just say, once I retired, I don't really shop anymore. So if you're a clothes horse, that might be a little different for you. If you like me, if you're like me and you love shoes, then you're going to want to make sure you have a good shoe budget. And of course, if you're wearing clothes that require dry cleaning or alterations, we want to have a good handle on what we spend on that as well. So when we come up with the total for our essential and discretionary expenses, I want to give you just a rule of thumb. I don't advocate rule of thumb planning for all circumstances, but it can give you a little bit of idea if you're on track for retirement. So let's say that your total essential and discretionary expenses are $5,000. If you multiply 5,000 by 12, it tells us how much you're spending per year. So that's $60,000. In order to find out if you've got a reasonably good nest egg, you take the amount you're spending, which is at $60,000, and you divide it by 0.04. What that does is it tells us for every $1,000 that we spend per month, that we're going to need to have, for every $1,000 that we spend per month, multiply that over the year. So if we're spending $60,000 for our expenses, then we're going to need to have a nest egg of a 1.5 million. Now, let's say, for example, that our credit cards and our cars are costing us $1,000 a month. So then it makes our total expenses per month $4,000. So if we multiply 4,000 by 12, we get 48,000. Dividing that by 0.04, it gives us a nest egg goal of 1.2 million rather than 1.5. So by getting debt paid off and living on the income we have, as well as saving for the future, because you probably need to replace your car, we can have a plan around that. Without the debt, though, what it really does is it reduces the amount that's required for a nest egg for you to live the life that you have become accustomed to living. So if you have questions, I'd love to sit down with you and get the process started, open the dialogue to find out what's important to you, what your goals are, and help you make a plan to achieve those and live the life of your dreams.